Hello and welcome back to another episode of The Yard. We're glad that you're here with us. My name is Darryl Scotti, and today I'm joined with my co-host, producer, and creative director, Alex Chacon. And we've got a special guest, drummer, producer, and engineer, Curtis Grippe. He's also the owner of this beautiful recording studio that we're in today, STEM Recording Studios. Before we start today's episode, I want to give you a little bit of background on Curtis. Curtis has been playing and recording music professionally for more than 3 decades. He has a wealth of experience really on both sides of the glass. He's recorded 2 CDs for Atlantic Records and is a member of Dead Hot Workshop. Curtis still plays out regularly with Dead Hot Workshop. He's with the Ghetto Girls and Stephen Ashbrook. Curtis's studio offers both analog and digital recording. He's specializing in music production, voiceover, sound design for videos, motion pictures, podcasts, you name it. Let's dig in. Curtis! Good to see you, man.
Thank you.
I've heard so much about you. First time in your studio, man, you got all kinds of cool stuff hanging out in here.
Thank you.
A lot of years, huh? I bet you put into this.
A lot of years.
Lots of cool stuff everywhere.
Thank you.
Giant drumsticks.
Yeah.
Pianos. Buffalo Bills gear.
Yes, definitely Buffalo Bills kid.
I've been doing some research and took a look at some of your projects. You got some diverse stuff going on in your background. Tell us a little bit about that.
I as far as bands I work with, I've done everything from jazz, country, rock, hip hop. I've even done there was a group called the Gong Divas who had nothing but bells and bowls, and it's pretty interesting.
Bells and bowls.
They said their music, they were making a CD that would help you fall asleep, and so I was hoping that it didn't work. So, while I was trying to work. I did good. I stayed away.
Did you mix and master?
Yeah. I probably listened to it more than they did, I'm sure.
So what about your experience as like a musician? What's your background?
Well, my mom's a pianist, so I started on piano and went to guitar. I was never allowed to have a drum set when I was younger.
I had the same problem.
Yeah, for obvious reasons.
Many kids.
But I had a friend who lived right behind us, Dominic Sestro. He had a drum kit, and I used to play it every day till his mom would come in and say, "Curtis, please go home." And I'd say, "Okay, I'll see you tomorrow, Mrs. Sestro." And I'd be back the next day. Once I played drums, it was over. That became my love. And that's professionally, that's pretty much all I play. I can still play a little bit of piano, still pad chords on the keyboard and play a little guitar just for fun, but live I play drums, and in the studio I'll do a little bit of everything if I need to.
Sure.
But I'll prefer professionals. I call myself a guitar owner, not a player.
You got a lot of them here.
A lot of really good sounding guitars we've been playing.
Oh, nice.
I particularly like this guild.
This one, yeah.
That's a beauty.
We're highlighting the guild.
Yeah. Going into the studio tomorrow night on a track. I'd like to take that.
Oh, nice. Yeah, that's a beauty.
Promise to bring it back one day. What's inspired you as a musician? I'm always curious about this, and an engineer and fine-tuning your chops. What inspired you as a musician to become a studio owner?
More than anything, the first time I walked into a studio, I fell in love with the entire process of recording and it helped with the guy we went in with. Andy Barrett was his name. He was here in Phoenix for many years. He still is, I think. It was just fascinating to me. It kind of was like art and science and throw in drums like sports. It was everything in one. And wow. I really fell in love with the gear. I'd copy down settings, and Andy was real generous with his knowledge. He spent a lot of time explaining things to me, and I would go and hang out in his studio, and he would tell me, you talk too much. If you talk too much, you're gonna have to go home. And he'd send me home, and again, like the drums, I'd be back the next day. And I'd stay as long as he'd let me stay, and as soon as I started asking questions, he'd kick me out.
So besides talking too much, what other challenges did you get into between transitioning as a musician into a studio owner?
Well, just acquiring gear, and places.
Sure, yeah.
Early on, we would rent a place and build it out, and get all kinds of soundproofing, everything, and then they'd either rent it to somebody else or sell it on us, or neighbors would call the police, or there was just all kinds of roadblocks in the way of I'd get started, record a band, be halfway through, and then we'd have to either move or it was constantly something. And until I had my own space, which was many years later, it just was never anything consistent.
It kind of makes for good stories, though, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Kicked out of there,
Yeah.
or you're driving downtown or whatever, and you're like, yeah, I used to have a studio.
One thing I'm curious about, you got a nice home here, and I know the value of owning a nice home, and I know the work that it takes to do that. And then I look around at your equipment, and you've got all your outboards, you've got all your amps and speakers put up, and I'm certain that they're in a certain place for you to get a certain sound, and it's just so well organized and put together. You must have had some, and you've been doing this professionally for over 3 decades, as we pointed out to our fans. You must have come across some good projects and had been blessed in many ways to be able to put this together. So, we talked a little bit about your challenges. So, kind of what led it to this incredible space that you've got here?
Many things. My wife has always been a big part of this particular of the business, and she's a real estate agent, and so she was always looking to get a better property, a bigger property. And once we got this property and I was able to build on it 15 years ago, that changed everything. That enabled me to have a place that I didn't have to worry about losing. It enabled me to build a structure that was, designed to be a studio. I wasn't trying to, change an existing structure. So I have all my foundations are separate pours. All my ductwork is dedicated to each room. They don't share ductwork. It's truly isolated, and I was able to make a real studio rather than trying to repurpose an existing building. So that helped. And then as far as the gear, from the time when Dead Hot Workshop, my band, got signed in the early 90s, that we had a gear budget. And I didn't buy drums, or I bought mics and mic pre's, and because I always knew I was going to have a studio. Even in the early days, if I needed a pair of headphones, I'd buy 6 pairs. I didn't go buy a mic stand, I'd buy 4 of them, because I knew that at some point I would need that stuff. And much of the gear I have in there I purchased in the early 90s, and for a fraction of what it's worth now. Much of it.
A man of vision, I can relate to that.
I've been planning this for a long time, and so when I did get the chance to make the building, Andy, once again, who by trade is an acoustical engineer, that's his actual, his profession, and I hired him to design it, and then I had a contractor build the shell, and I did everything inside but the sheetrock. So I did all the wiring. Thomas Lockenberg and myself did all the soldering.
Awesome. Amazing work.
Well, thanks.
So probably a great deal of a success feeling, and just you did it, you made it to it's such a beautiful studio, and I've gotten the luxury to get to work with you on a bunch of different projects here, and it's just got a really good vibe. I think we have another one coming here this way pretty soon. Maybe a week. I just want to rent it out for a week and just hang out and just it's got such a good energy and vibe.
I feel a great creative vibe in here too. I think a songwriter could camp out in here and collaborate and just do some great stuff. I'm excited to ask this question here. Tell us some of your favorite projects you've had in this room.
Because there's been so many, I have a lot of different ones for different reasons, but I like. There's been guys who come in, like there's a guy, Tim McDonald, I've worked a lot with. He had a band in the 90s, I think, called Big White Mercury, and then one called Looking for Aldous Huxley. And he's a singer-songwriter who doesn't play out, he doesn't have a band, he writes these beautiful tunes, and he needs music he needs everything done. So he'll come in, he'll lay down the track, acoustic, and sing, and then he leaves it to me, and I'll play drums. I'll have Thomas Loppenberg come in, play a little guitar.
Wow.
He'll come up with some bass player that'll throw down some bass lines, and I like working like that. I'm working with a gal named Natalie Merrill right now doing the same type of thing. So I like those type of projects. But then there's been bands like Banana Gun and Jappy's Descent and some of the earlier bands I worked with, where I made 4 records with Banana Gun, and they would book out 3 weeks, and we'd do it old school. We'd come to work every day.
This room's perfect for old school.
Yes, and I love that approach. I don't get to do a lot of that anymore, and I do like that. And then I've gotten to work with people like Jay Allen and who will be coming in, I guess, and Jay Poole. I got introduced to new musicians that have been around forever. We just didn't cross paths over the years, and really some really good guys, and like Boss Bragg is coming in, and those guys, and that drummer. I mean, some guys that just blow my mind, and I can't believe. So those were always fun. I love working with some of the old school guys like the Blossoms and Black Moods and, Pistoleros.
Which projects did the Blossoms do in here?
I've done several things with them. Mainly they'll come in and practice for tour, but they'll come in and do some pre-pro. Their last record, they completely pre-pro'd it here. And then I've worked with Robin on some of his personal things, and Robin's fun because he's always got... he does weird things. Like once he wanted to record something on the boat. So we went out on the boat and some other guys came and closed off the canyon and let us go into this little canyon and record on the boat. So we did a couple songs. That was really fun.
For sound?
Reverb? He has a boat and he just wanted to record on the lake. So it was actually really fun. I think I actually went to the wrong lake, and so I was an hour late. And I had a battery powered the battery-powered thing that I used, and I had never tried it before, so I didn't even know if everything was going to work, and I was really nervous, but and started off on the wrong foot, but ended up coming out really cool.
That's awesome.
So yeah,
let's record on a boat.
And guys I've never had like Jimmy Eat World, but I think their keyboard player Robin Vining has been in here, and then Chris Kirkwood from the Meat Puppets. He came in here with their piano player, who was amazing musician. I have so many favorites. It's really hard to pick. And just working in my bands, Dead Hot and Stephen Ashbrook and Ghetto, it's been neat to have this space to be able to record without the clock running, and things like that have been really a real asset for us in making our recordings.
Curtis, before we close out this segment, and thank you so much.
Sure.
But I got a question for you. As a musician and then your passion for getting into the studio and building this incredible space, and as a producer who's been around and done a lot of projects and gone out and toured with them, so you've got that whole kind of full spectrum of things. But how do you bring that vision into a collaboration with somebody that you've just met or just come into the studio? Do you stand back a little bit and just kind of let it percolate, or do you step in, or do you wait for an invitation? Kind of how does that go? And then when that happens, how do you implicate your
it depends on the personality. People are so different. There are some people who don't want their stuff messed with.
That's right.
I know that when we first went and made our first records, I look back and there are some things, hey, why don't you try this, why don't you try that? And we did it. And I look back now and think, man, we played that song 300 times and we did it a certain way, and this guy just on a whim, why don't we? So I'm sensitive to that kind of thing, first of all. Second of all, I believe that often the best ideas are going to come from the songwriter. And if I do offer, there's times where I'll offer an idea just so that they'll say, what about this? And just to change their perspective a little bit. And, it may be a very legitimate idea, but I'm more looking to get them involved. It really depends so much on the personality who I'm working with.
Sure.
But I want every song, when I hear a song, I want it to leave my room better than it was when it came in. That's kind of the thing. Whatever it takes to accomplish that, it doesn't matter if it came from me or 10-year-old kid, I don't care, as long as that purpose is served. And so as a producer, I always say you're not recording music, you're recording people playing music. And so it's more working with the people that you have sitting in front of you, and it differs every day wildly.
Amen.
So it's a different kind of just go with whatever happens, and that's my goal, is for the product to leave here better than when it came in.
Man.
And that's
let's end with that. Big Yard Nation, you just heard some incredible wisdom, how magic is made here at STEM Recordings. I want to thank you for this incredible segment. Thank you so much. And Alex, just great input. Just wonderful to be here with you guys. So we're going to go ahead and conclude this, but stick around. We've got 2 more segments coming up. We're going to listen to some music coming up in our 3rd segment. We're going to talk a little bit about the industry and the change in industry, and we're going to get Curtis's take on that. So stick around for that, Curtis Grippe. And when you're out there getting to wherever it is you're getting to, always love on your fate and love on your fellows. And I hope that you get everywhere that you need to go. Okay, so peace out from the yard. We're going to be back. God bless you.